That's right, baby! We are back, and we are semi-casual in the intro. Not so much. This one's gonna be weird. We are talking about the inner depths of my mind become physical, aka mythcrafting. As an aside, this video is talking a lot about localization. If you haven't seen my previous video on the subject, you should check it out here first. Myths. They do be mythin'. Myths give us a lot of insight into the ways ancient peoples viewed the gods, worshipped, and how they viewed the world at large. To a lot of heathens, these stories are what got them into the religion in the first place, and hold real significant emotional value. Which is why they get their knickers in the twist whenever someone messes around with the myth. Our ancestors knew the gods better than you ever will. You can't write myth anymore, it's just cringe fan fiction. Come here. Come closer. I hate to break it to ya, but all the myths are cringe fan fiction. The ones our ancestors had were just written a long time ago. I hope I don't have to explain not being a literalist, as that is often the basis for many people's arguments about writing modern myth. Myth was as much a literary pursuit as it was a religious one, in a few cases, even more so. The best and most readily available example of this was the Dionysia, often referred to as the Festival of Dionysus in Athens. This was a multi-day festival full of religious ceremony, revelry, and most of all, drama. Now, when I say drama, what I mean is theater. During the festival, a playwriting competition was put on, wherein 3 poets would write 3 tragedies and 3 comedies. Now, at these festivals, they had Athenians, Spartans, Corinthians, as well as non-Greek merchants and traders here for the festivities. A variety of languages were spoken, and folks came from vastly different backgrounds, and so they needed some way to create these stories in a way that was relatable to all the folks around. So they used the gods. Mythic heroes and the gods were no strangers to the stage. The gods served as stock characters. Everyone knew who they were and what they were about, allowing for folks to focus on what was going on stage, as well as the moral of the story. This was an exercise in myth writing. The gods act in the ways that folks of the time saw them, while the specific actions of the deity are made to serve the plot or the message. There is nothing about myth writing that is unique to antiquity or the Middle Ages. Hell, most myth is lost to time. What remains isn't some special canon deemed to be passed on by the gods, it's just what happened to be preserved through the years. In all likelihood, myths varied from region to region, city to city. I mean, just look at Cometicism. Which brings us back to localization. Myth is a great avenue for localization, as myths are so highly influenced by the culture and environment of the people who wrote it. For instance, much of the symbolism of ice and fire, mountains and fjords, the very seasons themselves, they don't really translate over to my life, my experiences here in nondescript South Florida. I mean, I have never seen snow before. And it's not like the gods only live in the north. You can count on Odin when you are in the middle of the desert. You ain't gonna be stuck in quicksand praying for Thor's protection and hear back, "No worries, I am at your side." Oh shit, is that quicksand? Nah, boss, that's out of my jurisdiction. Call me back when you're stuck in some snow or a storm or something like that. With all that in mind, what we're gonna do for the remainder of this video is go through my creation myth and look at points where it differs from the Norse myths and talk about why said changes have been made. Hopefully, this will give you a better understanding of why people do myth crafting at all, as well as a few examples of the thought process that goes into it. At least, my own thought process. With that said, let's begin. A cruel wind was blowing, and silt filled the air. This wind carried ominous tidings into the ears of the mad god. Intrigued by this portent, he sought out counsel from Mokosh and her daughter Morena. Mokosh was seated, weaving a mesh veil out of the wiry kudzu vines, and Morena was filling her basket in preparation for her journey back to Niflheim, when Odin approached. Odin relayed his concerns and asked for prophecy. Mokosh fetched a bowl and filled it with oil, then dropped in 2 cups of water. One skimmed from the water's surface, another trolled along the river's floor. After some contemplation, she spoke. So, this introductory paragraph serves dual purpose. This allows me to create myths with interactions between the deities I venerate from different cultures, whom I would never find a myth of them interacting, especially given the massive lack of myth that comes with the territory of Slavic heathenry. Secondly, this allows me an opportunity to preserve my own magical practices in the myth. That isn't much, but it's already 10 times better than the preservations of practice we got from Tacitus or Snorri. Mokosh continues. Heed this warning, all ye gods. Let it echo down to the men and wights. When you seek knowledge of what's to come, you first must know from whence you came. At the first moments of these 9 worlds there was naught but the dark waters. From the south were the muddy fresh waters of Niflheim, atop which were floats of scum. To the north were the scalding seas of Muspelheim, whose waters were salty and clear. In the place where they met, waves crashed into nothingness, and the salt and the scum sank down. Over time, the pile grew and grew till it scraped against the surface. And out of the pile emerged a single sprout. From out of that sprout grew the world cypress, its roots and knees pulling down the water and forming the sky within its branches. As the salt in the air settled onto the land, an Ent emerged out of its form. From Ymir's sweat was birthed the children of salt, and from his spit grew the children of scum. As mighty waves crashed against the salt pile, melting channels into its sides, from these drippings emerged a great cow, from whom the salt Ents fed. So, here we see a mashing together of the creation myth presented in the Poetic Edda, the Cirrus prophecy, and the more detailed account presented in the Gylfaginning. Keeping in line with Proto-Indo-European tropes, we've got a cosmic cow, and some of the beginnings of a divine twins kind of thing. The salt and scum bits, this is my replacement for ice and fire. My practice is really focused on the wetlands, especially the estuaries and swamps where I live. That liminal space where the land and water meet and mingle, where the fresh and the salt water mix and mesh together. Plus, salt is a really good analog to fire. It's essential to life and to our survival, but left unchecked, it leaves only death in its wake. The cow licked away the salt from the pile, till only the scum did remain. Revealed from within was a man named Buri. His son North took one of the salt Ents as his wife. From there were these firstborn of North, Freyr, Odin, and Freya. Together y'all struck down Ymir in his slumber, and buried his body under the roots of the tree. And then from the cow was made quick work, forming clay, the silt, the sand, from which grew the grasses, ferns, and palms, and from out crawled the beasts of foot and of claw. Safe under Yggdrasil's roots grew the fish, and from out of the water flew the bugs and the pests. Up in the branches were the nests of the birds, whose shells cracked and rained down upon the earth as stones. The sun and its siblings were lost on the ground, and scaled the great tree to look for a home. Atop its great reaches their lights still shone, taking turns, keeping watch, making light, searching round. From the hair of the cow was Midgard thus formed, a home for the beasts and for man. And speaking of man, as you walked across the sand, from driftwood their bodies you formed. And upon a great knee was the city of Asgard, where lies empty the Lord Freyr's throne, a place where the gods could lay down their swords, and soon each one's family is grown. And out of the stones you formed the Dvegar, wights of forge and of hearth and of home. And from out of the grass Lord Freyr made the elves, wights of plant and of water and loam. At the base of the tree collected the dew, which carved a deep well in the ground. To that well came 3 women, fated, becoming, and must be. They weave the fates of gods and men alike. So, the change is being made here, putting Odin, Freyr, and Freya as the first 3 gods. Well, that's 'cause they're the 3 gods I'm closest to. They are, if you would, the upper echelons of my hearth cult. I wouldn't call them that, but other people might use that. And then we have the PIE sacrifice of Ymir, but rather than making the world from Ymir, they bury him. This is sacrifice, and from it all comes forth, but not built out of Ymir, but rather that Ymir's sacrifice is nourishing Yggdrasil and the world, from which it all prospers. This is meant to be a justification of sacrifice not just to the gods, but to the lands and its wights, to show that they are too deserving of offering and praise. This also serves to codify this idea of reciprocity that we give in likeness of Ymir's sacrifice to the gods, to the land, and in turn, they provide. There is not an expectation, but we know surely something does come. Another portion here is the description of the creation of Midgard and Asgard, as well as the creation of the land and housewights. This is a way for me to describe my own animism within the context of the myth, which I think is a fair thing for folks to do because opinions on animism and the way that we see spirits is about as varied as anything else religiously. We continue. But enough of the past, for now at least, for more is sure to be revealed. The task at hand will not be brief, and its importance can't be overstated. The delicate balance of water and earth, this that affords all its life. Now comes the raging winds, now come the scorching sun. The land will blow away, the waters will dry, the peat will burn, and the stone will dissolve. This silt is a signal of the times that may come, but all can be stopped. By how? I don't know. That is what's fated for you to search, for that is your role in this web. If you succeed or not is of little import, but your chances are all of your own. So, this is my adaptation of the Ragnarok myth. It talks about what seems like the most likely end of the world right now, climate change. This allows me to preserve one aspect of Odin in Old Myth that I really love and I deeply connect to, and is, probably the biggest reason why I have a praxis with him, is this perseverance against impossible odds that he shows, without having to add in all that baggage and honestly headache that importing the rest of the Ragnarok myth would undoubtedly cause. We continue once more. Mokosh could give no more counsel to the wise god. He thanked her with offerings and good tidings. Odin got onto his horse, Sleipnir, and went forth in search for answers, in search for solutions, for knowledge. To start, he would study the silt, and went forth the silt strider, riding across the water and through the sky on top of the silt. As he goes along, he gathers as much as he can for his study, but the silt is fine and light, and as he travels the realms, some grains blow out from his saddlebag. To the farmers, a blessing. To the wilds, a curse. So, this ends with a bit of parable about the pursuit of knowledge. Knowledge, represented by the silt, is this amazing tool and also this dangerous weapon. We cannot afford not to try and capture this knowledge, but all things known inevitably spread, and some things are better not known. This myth is probably my favorite one I have written because of its closeness to the original myths, while also having this really unique and distinct aesthetic that fits my own practice. Did I have to make this? No. I could have had a really wonderful practice having never done this and staying with the Norse myths. But do I regret it? No. And does it make my practice feel closer? It absolutely does. I actually just held a ritual with my hearth group in my own unique style, and I felt like I was worried the entire time about how much folks would think my practice was unheathen. And it was a silly feeling. Folks were really receptive, and we exchanged stuff between our practices of shit we felt would enrich our own. Having a unique practice isn't anything to be ashamed of. As we've talked about before, diversity of religion ain't a new thing. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know that this type of thing isn't for all of you, but I do think I want to spend more time on this channel talking about localization because of its importance to my praxis. So if you liked what you saw here, go ahead and give the video a like. If there's anything that stood out to you, or you want to just rant at me in the comments, feel free to leave something. I'll definitely read it. Will I respond to you? Depends. And if you want to see more of this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I'll be seeing you again soon. Take care, and take it easy.